Japan currently holds one of the most impressive health statistics in the developed world. The latest data reveals that their obesity rate stands at a remarkably low 4.5%. When you contrast this with the United States, where the obesity rate has climbed past 40%, the disparity is shocking. For decades, people have tried to explain this difference by pointing to genetics. However, modern scientific research has definitively proven that the genetic difference between these populations is negligible. In fact, when Japanese individuals move to the West and adopt a Western lifestyle, their obesity rates quickly match those of their new environment. Another common misconception is that the Japanese population is obsessed with gym culture and rigorous exercise. The reality is actually the opposite, as only about 3% of the population in Japan holds a gym membership. If the answer is not superior genes and it is not hours spent on a treadmill, then there must be a hidden variable. That variable is what experts call high-efficacy life design. The human body is an adaptive biological machine that constantly responds to the signals it receives from its environment. What many people criticize as a lack of personal willpower is often just a symptom of a poorly designed environment. Today, we are going to scientifically decode 9 specific habits that form the foundation of the Japanese lifestyle. We will not just list them, but we will analyze the hormonal and metabolic mechanisms that make them work. By understanding the biology behind these habits, you can replicate their results anywhere in the world. The first pillar of this metabolic success is the education of the palate and the mechanism of neuroplasticity. In Western culture, we tend to view our food preferences as fixed personality traits that cannot be changed. We convince ourselves that we simply have a massive sweet tooth, or that we naturally despise the taste of vegetables. However, neuroscience provides us with a much more empowering perspective. Your taste buds and the reward pathways in your brain are highly plastic, meaning they are capable of significant adaptation. In Japan, food education is not a luxury. It is a mandatory part of the primary school curriculum. From a very young age, children are exposed to complex natural flavors like bitter vegetables, fermented soy, and plain rice. This early and consistent exposure sets a baseline for what their brains perceive as normal food. In contrast, the standard Western diet is dominated by hyper-palatable processed foods. These foods are engineered by food scientists to contain the perfect bliss point ratio of sugar, salt, and fat. When you consume these foods, they trigger a dopamine release in the brain that rivals the response to some addictive drugs. Over time, this constant overstimulation desensitizes your taste receptors. Natural foods like strawberries or carrots begin to taste bland and unappealing because your baseline has been artificially inflated. The science of neuroplasticity tells us that this process is reversible. Your taste bud cells have a turnover rate of approximately 10 to 14 days. This means that if you eliminate processed sugar for just 2 weeks, you physically grow new taste receptors. These new receptors will be much more sensitive, allowing you to appreciate the subtle sweetness of natural foods. The Japanese strategy is not about forcing yourself to eat food you hate for the rest of your life. It is about understanding that your cravings are a temporary biological program that can be overwritten. To apply this, you do not need to change everything tomorrow. Start by making one high-quality swap and sticking to it for 14 days to allow your neurobiology to reset. The second habit focuses on the psychological principle of decision fatigue and environmental design. In Japan, the physical environment is structured in a way that makes the healthy choice the easiest choice. While Japan has a high density of convenience stores, the food inside them is fundamentally different from the West. You can walk into any corner store in Tokyo and find grilled mackerel rice balls and nutrient-dense miso soup. In the West, convenience is almost exclusively synonymous with ultra-processed, shelf-stable junk food. This creates a scenario where eating healthy requires a constant expenditure of mental energy. Psychologists have identified a phenomenon called decision fatigue, which states that willpower is a limited resource. Every time you resist a temptation or make a complex decision, your reserve of willpower depletes. If you have to fight the urge to eat a donut every morning and a burger every lunch, you will likely run out of willpower by dinner. The Japanese population stays slim not because they have superhuman discipline, but because they do not have to fight these battles constantly. Their environment supports their goals rather than sabotaging them. You can replicate this metabolic advantage by ruthlessly redesigning your own kitchen and workspace. If you keep cookies and chips on your kitchen counter, you will eventually eat them because visual cues trigger desire. By removing these triggers from your immediate environment, you conserve your willpower for things that matter. If you prepare healthy meals in advance, you remove the friction of having to decide what to eat when you're tired. The goal is to design a life where eating healthy is the path of least resistance. The third habit leverages a fascinating visual trick known as the Delboeuf illusion to control calories without hunger. Japanese food culture places an immense value on presentation and portion control. A typical meal is served in multiple small dishes rather than one massive singular plate. This cultural habit takes advantage of a cognitive bias known as unit bias. Our brains are surprisingly terrible at judging the absolute caloric content of the food we eat. Instead, we judge satiety based on visual cues, such as whether the plate looks full or empty. The Delboeuf illusion demonstrates that the same amount of food looks significantly larger on a small plate than on a large plate. In the United States, the average dinner plate size has increased by roughly 23% over the last century. This visual distortion causes us to serve ourselves significantly larger portions to fill the empty space. We then feel compelled to finish the entire plate because of our psychological unit bias. By simply switching to smaller dinnerware, you can trick your brain into feeling satisfied with fewer calories. This is not about deprivation or starving yourself. It is about aligning your external visual cues with your internal biological needs. When your brain sees a small plate that is overflowing with food, it registers a sense of abundance and satisfaction. When it sees a large plate that is half empty, it registers scarcity even if the calorie count is identical. This simple optical adjustment can reduce your daily intake by up to 20% without you feeling restricted. The fourth habit concerns the regulation of the hormone insulin through a practice called sugar awareness. Japanese cuisine is not entirely void of sugar, but it treats sugar as a rare enhancer rather than a staple. Desserts in Japan are typically very small, delicate, and served in tiny portions intended to be savored. In the Western world, sugar has become a ubiquitous ingredient, hiding in everything from bread to pasta sauce. Biologically, large, frequent doses of sugar are a disaster for your metabolic health. When you consume a large amount of sugar, especially in liquid form, your blood glucose spikes rapidly. In response, your pancreas floods your bloodstream with the hormone insulin to shuttle that sugar out of the blood. High levels of insulin put your body into a state of energy storage, which effectively blocks fat burning. Furthermore, the rapid crash in blood sugar that inevitably follows a spike triggers intense hunger cravings. This creates a vicious cycle where you are constantly hungry and craving carbs, despite having just eaten. Japanese dietary patterns tend to keep insulin levels relatively stable, preventing these drastic peaks and valleys. By focusing on the quality of the dessert rather than the sheer quantity, they avoid the insulin trap. The application here is to start treating sugar as a high-quality ritual rather than a mindless daily habit. If you are going to eat cake, buy the best slice possible and eat it slowly without distraction. Avoid liquid calories like sodas and sugary coffees, which spike insulin faster than any solid food can. By flattening your glucose curve, you naturally reduce hunger and allow your body to access its own fat stores for energy. The fifth habit revolves around synchronizing your eating patterns with your circadian rhythm. Most Japanese people adhere to a consistent eating schedule, with 3 distinct meals at predictable times. Breakfast is usually consumed before 9 in the morning, lunch before 1, and dinner before 8 in the evening. This consistency is crucial because your metabolism operates on a biological clock. Your body learns to release digestive hormones like ghrelin and insulin in anticipation of your regular meal times. When you eat at random times or graze constantly throughout the day, you disrupt this delicate hormonal rhythm. This field of study is known as chrononutrition, and it is revealing deep insights into weight management. Studies show that calories consumed late at night are more likely to be stored as fat than those consumed in the morning. This is because your insulin sensitivity naturally drops in the evening as your body prepares for sleep. Late-night snacking also interferes with the production of melatonin and growth hormone, which are vital for repair. The Japanese habit of finishing dinner early allows the body to spend the entire night in a fasted state. This nightly fast is the prime time for your body to perform essential cellular cleaning and fat oxidation. To adopt this habit, try to establish a consistent eating window that aligns with the sun. Aim to stop eating at least 3 hours before you go to sleep to optimize your metabolic health. The sixth habit is arguably the most powerful yet overlooked secret of all, which is natural movement. In the West, we have a binary view of activity where we are either working out in a gym or we are sitting still. The Japanese lifestyle integrates low-intensity movement into the fabric of the entire day. People walk to the train station, they take the stairs instead of elevators, and they rarely drive for short trips. Scientifically, this type of movement is called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. NEAT accounts for a much larger portion of your daily total calorie burn than a structured 1-hour workout. When you sit for prolonged periods, your body enters a state of metabolic hibernation. The production of lipoprotein lipase, an enzyme responsible for breaking down fat, drops by 90% when you sit. Going to the gym for 1 hour cannot fully undo the metabolic damage of sitting for the other 15 hours. The Japanese remain slim because they keep their metabolism humming all day long through constant low-intensity motion. This continuous movement keeps insulin sensitivity high and prevents fat from settling in your tissues. You can significantly increase your NEAT by simply standing while on the phone or parking your car further away. These micro movements add up to hundreds of extra calories burned every single day without the stress of a workout. It is a sustainable way to keep your energy expenditure high without feeling exhausted or sore. The seventh habit focuses on the gut-brain axis and the physiological speed of eating. The use of chopsticks naturally slows down the pace at which you can consume food. It is mechanically difficult to shovel huge amounts of food into your mouth with chopsticks compared to a spoon. This naturally enforces a slower eating cadence, which is vital for proper satiety signaling. There is a significant communication lag between your stomach and your brain. It takes approximately 20 minutes for the vagus nerve to send the chemical signals of fullness to the brain. If you eat a standard American meal in 5 minutes, you can easily consume double what you need before your brain knows you are full. The Japanese concept of mealtime respects this biological delay, allowing the signals to catch up. By eating slowly, you give hormones, specifically cholecystokinin and leptin, time to rise and signal satisfaction. These hormones tell your brain that you have received enough energy and that you can stop eating. If you do not use chopsticks, you can simply adopt the habit of putting your fork down between every single bite. Chew your food thoroughly, which also aids the first stage of digestion by mixing food with saliva. Slowing down is the single most effective way to prevent overeating without having to change what you eat. The eighth habit is about the cephalic phase of digestion and the practice of mindful respect for food. In Japan, eating is often treated as a sacred activity that deserves your full attention. They do not typically eat while walking down the street or while driving a car. Biologically, digestion actually begins in the brain before food ever touches your lips. This is called the cephalic phase of digestion. The sight and smell of food trigger the release of saliva and gastric juices, preparing the stomach for the incoming meal. When you eat while distracted by a smartphone or a television, this crucial phase is blunted. Furthermore, distracted eating keeps your body in a sympathetic nervous system state, also known as fight or flight. Digestion functions optimally only when you are in a parasympathetic state known as rest and digest. If you are stressed and distracted, your body diverts blood flow away from the gut to the muscles. This leads to poor nutrient absorption, bloating, and a lack of satiety. The Japanese habit of sitting down and focusing solely on the meal optimizes this entire biological process. It allows you to experience maximum sensory satisfaction from your food. When you are truly mindful, you notice the textures and flavors, which leads to feeling satisfied with less food. The practical application is to implement a strict no-screen policy during your meals. Turn off the television, put away the phone, and just simply eat. The ninth and final habit is the famous Confucian concept of harahachibu. This ancient teaching instructs people to eat until they are only 80% full. This is not just a poetic philosophy, it is a biological survival mechanism that promotes longevity. When you constantly eat until you are 100% full or stuffed, you are placing immense stress on your cells. The process of metabolizing a huge meal creates metabolic byproducts called free radicals. These free radicals cause oxidative stress and inflammation, which are the root causes of aging and disease. By stopping at 80%, you significantly reduce this oxidative load on your body. Scientific research on caloric restriction consistently shows that it extends lifespan in almost every species tested. Slight undereating triggers the production of sirtuins, which are a family of proteins that protect cells from aging. This puts your body into a state of repair and efficiency, rather than a state of metabolic overload. The challenge is that the signal for being 80% full is quite subtle. It feels like you could technically eat more, but you are no longer feeling urgent hunger. In the West, we have conditioned ourselves to confuse the feeling of being full with the feeling of being stuffed. Learning to stop when you are simply no longer hungry is a master skill for long-term weight management. It prevents the post-meal energy crash, often called a food coma, that follows a heavy meal. It leaves you feeling light and energetic, ready to move, which circles back to increasing your NEAT. In conclusion, these 9 habits form a cohesive system of intelligent life design. They are not a temporary diet that you suffer through for a few weeks before quitting. They represent a permanent shift in how you relate to your environment and your own biology. The Japanese do not stay slim because they possess infinite amounts of willpower. They stay slim because their culture creates a flow where health is the natural default outcome. You do not need to adopt all 9 of these habits today to see profound results. Attempting to change everything at once usually leads to burnout and failure. I invite you to choose just one of these habits to implement starting this week. Maybe you will start by downsizing your dinner plates to trigger the Delboeuf illusion. Or perhaps you will commit to a 12-hour fasting window to reset your insulin sensitivity. Master one habit until it becomes automatic, and then add another one. This is the path to sustainable health that does not require gym membership or a starvation diet. It requires awareness, patience, and a deep respect for the complex biology of your own body.